we doing today, folks? Welcome to season 4 of Just Convos. Today we have the great Nate Fowler with us from Pest Solutions. We're going to learn about the game of pest control. Very, very crazy game. But we're also going to take a trip because this guy, he helped me out in 2019, taught me some things about business I never was into. Things like state contracts, city contracts, government contracts, showed me where to go, where you need to go. So I'm going to say in 2019, I took a trip off of his words up to a place, but we'll get into that later in the conversation. Today, folks, I want to introduce you to Nate Fowler. How you doing today, sir?
Hey.
Good to see you, man.
Thank you for having me here.
I'm glad you could come out today, man. Glad you come out. With all my guests, first thing I do like to talk about, though, before we get all into the good stuff, is are you from Philadelphia?
Yes.
What school did you go to?
Born and raised in Mount area, still living in the area, and multiple schools I went to, but elementary was ECM Elementary. Middle school was John Story Jenks, which is in Chestnut Hill.
Okay.
And then high school was Germantown High.
Okay. Product of the Philadelphia public school system.
Yes, sir.
How was it?
I made it through.
Learn enough?
Yeah, I made it through. I went on from Germantown. I was in a college preparatory program.
Like a
It's
magnet
called program.
Yeah, I was in. I got you.
And I went on to get my secondary education.
Okay. In Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania? Or?
In Pennsylvania, outside of Lancaster, at a college university called Millersburg University.
Okay, I got a good friend of mine, son. He's going there right now to finish up his. He's going to go get his bachelor from me. He got what's the 2-year degree called? Associates. He has associates. He got associates in public school. While he was in the school, he had those crazy classes.
Right.
And now he's just going 2 years in military. I was like, damn, boy, he done it 2 years. That's amazing to me. Like he put the.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, those programs weren't in effect when I was going to school.
Okay.
They kind of transitioned to that later. I have a cousin who did the same thing, and she's now in Drexel.
Okay. They had programs I never took advantage of them. I'm sorry, folks. I wasn't applying myself to them books.
Well, it's not too big. It's not.
It's different type of education now.
Okay.
All right, so first we're gonna get into the nitty gritty with this pest control. Like I said, 2019, man, my parents' house was like infested with mice. Like you can't imagine like where all these mice come from, how they got there. I don't know. I come from New Orleans, and my dad was like, yo, in the kitchen, it's like they're doing rap videos, and every time you come in there, I never seen so many mics come out. They all had hoodies, they all had Timbs on, and they was just making their way through the kitchen. And I'm like, man, this shit crazy. I didn't even know where to start at. So it was funny because I had a tenant who this tenant was probably one of the worst tenants I ever had. But I guess he might have had worked for you or something. But he said, man, I got this guy, Pest Solution. I got this guy who do very, very good extermination. I'm like, man, whatever, man. I'm like, I ain't listening to him. I'm like, but you know what? I just took his card. I took the card, and then I was working at night, so I'm like, all right, man, let me figure out how to get. So I told my dad, I was like, hey, man, take this card. This guy told me this dude's supposed to be the best. I said, just put it everywhere. And the thing that made me try you is because he said you at that time you were doing the red terminal. So what I figured is like, well, damn, if he in the red terminal, I figure he can do anywhere. Like this can't be worse than the red terminal. So got the card, came out there. I want to tell you, like in 2 days, all the hip hop mice, they had a hip hop funeral, dog. It was bigger than Biggie funeral, the way all of them was laid out dead, yo. And they wasn't even in the house dead. I don't even know where they died at, but they was gone. So that was like one of the best. And I was like, man, this guy is amazing. So I never even saw him because I was always working at night, and it wasn't until he had to come to another one of my properties and exterminate the property, and we had a leaky pipe in the basement. And when we go down there, we go in the basement to go check out because he put the bait in the basement, and man, when I'm talking about the whole basement, water just busting all over the place. I'm looking at him, he looking at me. I'm just like, this is fucked up. That's all I can say in my head. Like when he looked at me, he was like, man, you got problems. I'm like, yeah, I do got problems. And you know, that was like that was the beginning of me resetting the whole structure of how the real estate was going, beginning the process of cleaning things out from where people moved out and had to get rid of their old stuff. But all that's neither here nor there. But Nate, that was my introduction to you that day. And from there, man, you really did you helped me out because I still use you to this day. Whenever we go on the property or we got too much going on, we definitely come get you guys at Fowler. You guys, at Pest Solution, you guys are the best. I want to thank you in front of everybody that you know, man. You are definitely the top notch of that, right? So how did you get into it? How did you get into the game?
Interesting progression of life.
Okay.
As I said a little while ago, I had secondary education at Millersville University in occupational safety and industrial hygiene management, OSHA in the workplace, safety in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And my progression from there is once I graduated from there, my first job was in finance. I got a job, you got out of school, you got to make some money.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to go back home.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to have my own place. So I just took, one of the jobs that was available to me that was open at the time. And I started working at Prudential Life Insurance, but actually it was their annuities department.
Mm-hmm.
Worked there for maybe about a year or so, left there and went to the Vanguard Group,
Okay.
which is a mutual fund company.
Just like Prudential.
Yeah, in Malvern, but little different product, little different securities products, but
Straight up 30. I want to say straight up Route 30.
yes,
Yeah.
up that way. So I worked at Vanguard for 3 years,
Okay.
and then while I was at Vanguard, I was a little ambitious and wanted to do something on my own. I always felt like I needed to work for myself,
Okay.
and I was a little ambitious, and started doing property investing.
Okay.
And this is the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But the market had a correction, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, a lot of stuff happened. I had a young family at the time. I couldn't do this because the money wasn't coming in fast enough. And if you don't have enough
You will.
liquid income
Yes.
coming in.
Everybody's experiencing that right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people woke up about 6 months ago and their credit lines got cut in half,
Yeah.
if not cut all the way off.
Yeah.
A lot of people credit scores went from 750 down to 600, and now that bank that used to be like, "How you doing today, sir?"
Yeah.
Don't even know your name no more. They might be talking about closing your accounts. You know who you are.
Yeah,
But don't worry
yeah.
about it. Just give it time. It may take like 4 years, but it's going to pass.
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
But that's basically what happened. And, when you got a young family, you got a young, at the time I was married, everybody's looking at you to provide.
Yeah, with the food at.
Yeah, provide. So I had to go back into corporate America.
Mm.
And I went back into corporate America. And finally I ended up at a retirement community.
Mm.
I was at a retirement community, working there for 8 years. Grew to love that demographic of people.
Okay.
All right, still do. Didn't know when I started working there that I would end up falling in love with that demographic of people. They're almost like the lost
tribe.
tribe of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only time the government even really cares about them, or anybody, politicians, any care about them, is when it's time to vote.
They want their vote.
Yeah, they want their vote. But other than that, the states aren't putting any new money in affordable housing. The projects that you talked about that they used to build for seniors, they're not doing it. They're actually privatizing it now.
Mm-hmm.
So the government is just really allowing private entities
To
build them using state credits, like tax credits, basically.
Like stadiums. Same way they do with stadiums.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. However, there's a gap. So they only give you have to bid for the state credits, the tax credits. If you get the tax credits, there's still a gap.
And you got to fill that gap.
You got to fill that gap in order to build the building.
Now what type of money are you talking about? Like that gap?
Millions.
Millions?
Yeah.
Like 10, 20? Or like,
Depending on how big your project
Okay.
is. So I was connected with a company that was building, they weren't building skilled nursing or nursing homes. They were doing independent living,
Okay.
but they were just for elderly.
Gotcha.
Right? So they basically had to bid for these tax credits in order for them to, once they got the tax credits, then they sell them to like big corporations.
Oh.
All right. So that's how they generate
the money.
funding from that.
Mm-hmm.
But see, the big corporations, it's how the game is played. The big corporations would take the tax credits and then hold them. So they might not want to use them for this tax year.
So now you gotta wait Or once you sold it to them, it's cool. Or you got to
Yeah, they give you the money.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
But this is the thing. This is how the game is played with the big corporations. They buy these tax credits. All right. Now, you ever hear that? You wonder how Amazon doesn't pay any taxes?
Yeah. That's
the tax credits.
So they hold the tax credits, so they got a big year profit, and then put them against.
They hold the tax credits, and you can hold them for a certain amount of years.
Okay.
So that's how the big corporations don't pay a lot of taxes.
Okay.
So once they buy the tax credits from you, then there's always a gap, and sometimes you can get a grant. The gap might be $3 million, depending on how much your project is. So you might be able to get a grant for that amount of money, or you have to go to private philanthropists who will give you that money. And when you build a building, they have stake.
Yeah.
You know, in the business, they have stake in the building.
Okay.
But you're building these affordable housing, garden style apartments for, and only a lot of times it was like 60 in one building. All right.
Oh, so this was high rises. This wasn't no flats. These wasn't flats.
No, not flats. A lot of times it was 3-story. They wouldn't be higher than 3.
Okay. 3-story.
Right. And obviously we have an elevator in them. But this wasn't assisted living or skilled nursing, which requires RNs on
No, this
site.
is just old
Independent
enough.
living.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I guess they rents probably stay controlled. You can't be going all high. With your
Well,
rents.
here's the thing with that, and with affordable housing, that just means that a certain segment
Has
of
to be
those
affordable.
60
Gotta
have to be a
affordable.
certain amount. Right?
Gotcha.
That might be 20% of the 60.
They just did it down Bloomberg where they blew up the projects at.
Yeah.
There's affordable housing on like probably 20 units.
Yes.
Like 250 units.
Yes.
Yes, I got you.
Yes.
It's a lottery for the 20.
Yes, yes,
it's
absolutely.
It's a lottery. For
It's actually a lottery to get in a lot of them anyway, because you have to think about it. Now, it's 2023. There's all the baby boomers are becoming retirement.
Correct.
All right. So this year, I think 76 million Americans are now retirement age, which is almost a quarter of the country.
Yeah, it's
Right.
300 million. Yeah.
Exactly. So that being said, you have all of these people, because let me back up just a little bit more, and I'm going to get to answer your question in a second. There's a lot of, every industry that followed the baby boomers became wealthy.
Yes, correct. Auto, everything. Yes, correct.
Every industry from the time the baby boomers started in the 40s,
Number one consumer, correct.
they became wealthy.
Yeah.
That's why you have the Gerbers. That's how you have the Pampers. That's why you have all those toys. Remember all those toy stores? You know, the Mattels and all those.
Toys R Us, all them.
All of that they all became wealthy following the baby boomers. What didn't happen was they got dropped off and they started retiring. So now the demand for affordable housing for the elderly can't be met. It's too great across the country.
Because the income going to be too low compared to the cost.
Exactly. So the developers aren't building any new buildings for the elderly.
Fuck them old people.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. I mean, and not being funny, but yeah, that's how they look at it. Believe me, I'm in that part of the industry, so I get it.
So they're building them for the young ones.
Yes.
All right. So they want to get their money more upfront than over long term.
Correct.
Okay. So they don't want to deal with, because there's a lot of state regulations and stuff, especially when you get into skilled nursing and nursing facilities.
This is the lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And then here's the other thing that I think people need to be aware of when it comes to real estate is you are extremely asset rich, but cash poor. Your assets are worth
a lot of money.
A lot of money, but it's not liquid.
No.
Okay, you can borrow against it.
That's another problem.
It's another problem, because now if your cash flow isn't great enough,
You won't be able to maintain the property. Yeah. I understand.
So I ended up in that, and I learned a lot about that. They sent me to leadership classes, and while I was there, I was responsible for all of the vendors that came on site.
Okay.
And didn't know it.
Hold on for
Go
a
ahead.
second. In case you was following the question, you might have forgot, folks. I'm asking how do you get into extermination. So if you kind of got lost, I bring you back. So go ahead.
Okay.
No, that's for people at home. People got ADD. They go,
Oh,
what the
okay.
hell going on?
They can't follow that.
Yeah.
So anyway, what happened basically was for 3 years I walked around the facility because when the guys were working, it was my responsibility to let everybody into the apartments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for 3 years, I walked around with an entomologist and didn't know I was being trained.
Mm-hmm.
Because me being inquisitive, he's doing stuff. I'm like, what do you do that for? What's that for? You know, and then a lot of times when he came to do work at the facility, he would bring different chemicals so he can try them out to see how they work before he gave them.
Entomologist would be exterminator.
Entomologist is exterminator. He's a person who studied insects
Yes.
and bugs.
Okay.
He's a person who's pretty much an expert in that.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay? And a lot of pest control companies have somebody like him.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it all started out when there was a bed bug outbreak. All right.
Mm.
He would come. He would make sure that they worked on his guys worked on the bed bug outbreak, you know, the way that they trained him to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So over subsequent weeks from after there's a treatment, you have to come back and do an inspection.
Mm-hmm.
So he wouldn't send his guys, he would come. So I had to make sure he get in
To every apartment.
every apartment. And so that ended up me having a
Relationship.
apprenticeship
Yeah, apprenticeship.
without knowing I was having an apprenticeship.
Okay.
All right. And then we also had a program with a bed bug dog. All right. So I'll tell you all this too. If you're ever at a hotel and you see somebody in just regular clothes with a beagle, a dog, a beagle. You know what the beagles are?
Yeah,
Dogs?
dog. Yeah, sniffing dogs.
Yeah, no beagles. And it says service dog. It's probably not going to have anything on it that says bed bug dog. It's probably just going to have like a leash or a collar around it. They're just going to look like normal people.
But they sniff for bed bugs.
They go into the hotels and they're doing preventative maintenance for
For bed bugs.
bed bugs. A lot of times that's what happens. Yeah.
Just learned something new, folks. Just learned something new. Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah.
So good.
So I walked around with one for 3 years.
Wow.
So I kind of learned, you know, the dog's name was Scout. So I kind of learned how to handle, took care of him.
Mm-hmm.
I learned what he was looking for, how he changed. They say change of behavior. You know, I just watched all this stuff for 3 years. And in the meantime, there were some changes that was happening at the company I was at.
Okay.
And I lost my job.
Mm.
And I remember having a moment where, and I still to this day don't know why it happened, but it was the best thing that happened in my life.
Mm.
All right. Still don't know why. It was just something that I believe God wanted to happen for me. And lost my job, and I remember coming back to my apartment, and I'm a praying man, so I laid on my face and I prayed and I said, okay, God, what are we going to do now? And all I could hear, not audibly, but I can kind of feel it, was, what do you have in your hand? So I got up from that, and I got a piece of paper, and I wrote down 3 things. What 3 things could I do out of my own skills that I could monetize? All right. And one of them was exterminate. Because at the end of the day, I just thought about it. I've been walking around with, his name was Jim Nace. If you ever see this, Jim, I'm talking about you. His name was Jim Nace. He worked for a company called Moore Pest Control. They're all located out in the Souderton area. I was out in Lansdale, okay? And I got up from that prayer and I gave him a call. And I said, Jim, I lost my job. What do I need to do what it is you guys do? And he wanted to offer me a job. Mm-hmm. And I said, what do I need to do? He said, all right, I'll be over there at 4 o'clock. So he came at 4. He gave me 2 books. And he said, take a $50 check, go to this building, take your test, start your business. So with 2 borrowed books,
$50 check.
$50 check, and no other information.
Faith the size of mustard seed. Faith.
I just went ahead and did it. And
You just went ahead and became a multi-million-dollar operation.
we don't know way to that.
Yeah,
We don't know way to
became
that.
very multi. I'm telling you.
But that's how I got into it. I mean, there's more to the story.
Yeah.
I'm answering your question.
So when you step out on that faith, at that time when you lose your job, how long do you have before you got to start bringing home that money for the family and stuff? Like, so how short is that window? Sometimes it's a lot of pressure.
You know, when you really know the guy got your back, you ain't really worried about that. You just know you got to do stuff. Because when I got the license, okay. Now, mind you, all up until this time of life, I was trying to do different things that I could do to try to make money because I believe in multiple income streams.
Okay.
But nothing really stuck out as multi-level marketing stuff. And, you know, a little bit of this here, a little bit of this there.
Can I say a bunch of weird shit?
Yeah, a lot of stuff that just really.
A lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, just stuff that just really
wasting time.
Yeah, you know, and money.
Yeah.
Okay, but I was trying. I was attempting.
Yeah.
You know, and this
throwing
is
wet tissue at the wall, seeing what stick.
Exactly.
That's what we call it.
Exactly. But this here, when I got up and I started doing it, I didn't realize it was as lucrative as it is, and I didn't realize that it was a lot more to it than just going and spray.
Yeah, you just ain't spraying.
Spray and just putting down traps.
Yeah.
You know, there's a myriad of different categories to that license. Okay, that you can get yourself involved in. I'm sure we'll get into that later, but there was a new world that was opened up to me that I wasn't privy to, because Jim, pretty much I only saw what he did at the facility. I didn't go walk around with him every day.
But so you're in that facility and you pretty much ran everything, so you kind of knew how much you was paying them also.
A lot of money.
And that's like a service. That would be like, yeah, we don't get to how much it is, but that's like a service contract. So you saw that like, look, if I got to land one of these or a couple of these, this will put me, you know, in a good position.
Absolutely.
Although it's not that easy because you might have factor in the workers, insurances, staff, you know, things like that. Because sometimes, you know,
the overhead is low.
Okay.
The highest part of your overhead is your insurance for your vehicles.
Okay.
Right.
But then you still got to get customers and people to trust you to allow you to do it.
Absolutely. And that's when you just walk out and just do it.
Okay.
And see, you can't get paralyzed by paralysis of analysis, as they call it. You can't get paralyzed by your own fear.
Yeah.
All right. Because when you got people depending on you, you can't be afraid to just go out there and do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they need to be able to look you in the eye and see you doing something, and you got to be able to look them back in the eye and say, I am doing something about where I'm at. And sitting there just wondering how you're gonna make it happen, or you really don't have time for that. You just got to put your head down and do it. You got to do it. And when I started with some Cintas pants, some old boots, and just regular t-shirts. All right. And I started I still have this car. So it's a Mazda 6 hatchback.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, I see if that's the little gray one. Yeah.
Little gray one. That's the vehicle I started with. Mm-hmm. Little did I know when I bought it that it was going to be the start of my business.
Okay.
Okay. And
definitely not what he poured up in the day, folks.
But that being said, you know, you just gotta go ahead and do it. And I put my head down for 3 years and just worked.
I was about to ask you, how long did it take? Like, how long did it take when you was like, oh, this is something?
I knew pretty much right away. And I'll tell you what happened. My thought pattern was, now mind you, I never was in business before in my life. Okay. So it was a lot that I didn't know. But I wasn't afraid of what I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I had a conversation with my dad one day, and I said, you know, I told him I had a couple clients and I was doing some jobs for like $40 and $50 and stuff like that. That's not what the industry standard is. Mm-hmm. And I was telling my dad, and my dad, you know, he has a business background, and he said to me, he said, what are you charging everybody? And I told him, and he was like, is that what everybody else is charging? I said, no.
Pioneer Elite Care is committed to treating each individual with dignity and respect. We take pride in providing quality care to those who require assistance at home. Contact us now.
Excellence is our standard.
Excellence is the rule,
Never the exception.
PioneerEliteCare.com